Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from the world of marketing from New Jersey, USA, Mr. Moti Elkaim. Moti, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Moti is the founder of Atlantic Brands. He's a branding and marketing strategist who has led various brands to global expansion. So, Moti, before we talk branding, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Absolutely. My marketing journey was quite unique. When I came to the United States 19 years ago, I really found a home in the innovative environment here. And I started climbing up the ranks in marketing. And what I found very early on is that content and storytelling is the foundation to grow brands. I started working as a brand manager in one of the world's largest jewelry chain, actually.
Wow.
Grew their patented diamond cut to be the fastest growing brand in the world, grossing over $200 million in sales. From there, I actually wanted to transition to tech. And I was the chief marketing officer in several companies, grew them from the stage of founders-led sales, very early on startups, all the way to unicornism. And I was also a lecturer of public speaking at Columbia University, where I got my master's degree. That's in a nutshell a bit about my marketing experience.
What an amazing and diverse journey. Thank you. So let's talk about branding and your business company called Atlantic Brands. Let me start by asking you, Moti, what are some of the key elements every strong brand should have?
You know, it's interesting. When we look at branding, I see it as kind of the psychology of a product, right? Because brand, just like people, they have layers to them.
Yeah.
You have the first impression. And then after you open the box, you have the brand experience, which is the personality of the product. So the most important thing to me in a brand is an identity. And where most companies are failing to build the right brand is because they are failing to really build the right identity for their company, for their product. And when you don't have that right identity, it's easy for you to get lost in the crowd. So, and I've seen it over and over again. The successful companies are those who are focusing and understanding the values of branding, while the not so successful companies, they're just focused on sales. They want to grow the numbers, and they miss the true value proposition of their company.
Well said. And how would you define a successful brand strategy?
So a successful brand strategy, to my opinion, needs to create a good set of associations. I'll tell you a story because I'm into storytelling.
Yeah.
When I just moved to the US, I lived on the Upper West Side. And I went into the grocery store. I don't know if you heard about the brand Pillsbury. Have you heard about the brand Pillsbury?
Yeah.
Right. So I came into the grocery store and I couldn't find Pillsbury. I love their croissants. And I saw a worker that worked in the grocery store, but he didn't speak any English. And I told him I'm looking for Pillsbury, and he just looked at me and he didn't know what I'm saying. So what I did is that I just took my finger, I pointed in my stomach, and I said, woohoo! As soon as I did this Pillsbury mark, it took me directly to Pillsbury.
Amazing.
Without even speaking. So the ability to create brand associations,
correct,
for you to recall exactly what that brand is, that's an identity. And if you're creating that set of associations, this is your right marketing strategy. Allow people to understand your identity right from the start.
Well said. And, there are so many brands and there are so many different countries and cultures people work in. Some brands last forever. Some brands die very quickly. But I wanted to ask you, as a branding and marketing strategist, how can a business reassess and reinvigorate its brand identity?
That's a very, very good question. Look, we have to realize two things. One, and by the way, you see it in the US all over the place. Great brands with not so great products are selling amazingly. Great products who doesn't have such a great brand are not doing so well.
Correct.
Your ability to do continuous research, be on top of your user needs, communicate with the field, have the management of the brand, not the salespeople, not the marketing people, constantly interact on a daily basis with customers. That is the right way to go. I know an executive from Sephora, one of the largest cosmetic chains in the US, from Sephora, and she's a high-ranking executive in Sephora. Once a month, go to the sales floor on the store and selling to customers directly in order to understand exactly the challenges.
Right.
So if you're not in tune with your customers, if you're just sitting in the back of an office, you're probably going to lose touch at one point.
Well said. And, you mentioned a few minutes ago about your love for storytelling. My next question is, how important is storytelling in building a brand?
Let me put it this way. Storytelling is not important. It's everything. It's everything. 95% of the decision-making that we are making in our life is based on emotional triggers. Right. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner, studied the human decision-making process. He's an economic behaviorist in the University of Princeton. And he realized that people make 95% of the decision in business, day-to-day life, based on emotional triggers. So when you have the ability to connect with people, allow them to associate themselves with the brand, create an emotional journey, that is where they'll be able to connect with your brand. Now, let's think about a few examples. Let's think about actually all the examples, not a few examples.
Right.
If you look at all the commercials, if you look at all the successful brands, they never really talk about the product, right? They talk about everything else but the product.
Correct.
The influencer life, how it can change your life, the journey, the cause, because everyone knows that the product doesn't matter. As I said, great brands are great brands with okay products. Okay products without the right storytelling will never become great brands.
Right. Well said. My next question is that, you must have worked with many, many different brands. Based on your own experience, what are some of the common challenges a lot of businesses face when it comes to branding?
So it depends on what stage of the business, right? We have big corporations, we have emerging companies. My experience is to scale emerging companies from the point of very few people in the company all the way to 100, 200 employees, and then help them establish the brand. I'll tell you what are the challenges. The business conflict, obviously, I would say in many, many cases, takes over the recognition and the importance of brand building. And what do I mean by that? In early stage companies, cash flow and runway is really critical. Right. And they want to see it come in. And it's critical in every stage of the company. But what happens is when you only focus on sales, very early on, you'll realize that your customers will ask you, well, what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're selling? And you won't be able to give that concise, chilling answer that will allow them to connect with you.
Right.
So the brand foundations, building a brand, I believe, is easy. It's just the understanding that you need to invest in it.
Correct.
That's the hard part. Correct. Because we have the branding playbook all around the world. You it's very easy to build a brand. You just need to really devote the time and resources to it, and that's the challenge.
Very well said. And, I've often said that brands are like children. You got to keep nurturing them every single day of their life for them
Absolutely.
to prosper and grow. But well said. My next question, Moti, is, I'm from the boomers generation. So I remember 4 decades ago when it used to be talking of marketing, it was billboards and full page advertisements in newspapers. But today's the digital age. I wanted to ask you, how has branding and marketing evolved in the digital age?
That's a great question. Look, we have a different touch point now than, again, the billboards and even the newsletters.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that we are in the palm of every consumer. And what brands need to understand now, that micro messaging is the key to brand perception. We need to understand that the user journey is changed from pushing information to the user pulling information, meaning the role of interactions with the customers is first to tease, because we don't want that to happen. When you see the ad, when you see the touch point, we don't want that to happen. We don't want to be swiped left. We don't want to be swiped up and down. We need the initial tease in order for them to say, okay, I want to read more. Now, why is that initial tease very important? Exactly because of what we said before. Because if you have the right associations with the brand, then even from that small tease, you know exactly what the brand stands for. You'll know the identity, and you'll want to read more, and you want to engage more. So the consumer journey, the customer journey, and with brand interaction is now heavily focused on micro messaging.
Very interesting. And in this micro messaging, what is the role social media plays?
Well, I am a firm believer, and it's going to be contradictory to what many other marketers believe. I'm not a fan of social media for advertising.
Okay.
I think the return on investment is low, especially for emerging companies. They can burn their money very, very quickly and lose their budget, and therefore interaction with their customers. The problem with social media is that everyone is running to it, but brands are often failing to ask themselves, where does my audience live?
Yes.
Where do they interact? Where can I find them where no one else is going?
Right.
So if I'm going to Instagram or TikTok, then I'm competing on the same mindshare, on the same second, with gazillion of other brands. My customers are not on social media.
Correct.
That's the wrong assumption. My customers' interaction with my brand are somewhere else. And the challenging part is to find, in today's digital age, the physical interaction with the brand. So I'll give you an example. My kids, they watch YouTube like any other kids, and they love it. Now, what I realized is that there is this person that, this influencer that they watch on YouTube all the time. But what I realized is that they may watch him on YouTube, but what happens is that all the kids in the playground are playing the games that this influencer is telling them to play. So if I want to go after, let's say my target audience is the kids or the families, I would find an environment they play in. It would be very costly for me to now try to get mindshare on YouTube. So now I know where they are. I'll go to where they are. I'm not saying bombard playgrounds with ads, but I'll realize what is the mindset that they are in when they're interacting with the brand.
Well said. And, what is now I'm noticing is the huge amount of data and analytics is available, for anything and everything that a company does. How important is data and analytics for branding and marketing?
There is a famous video in Steve Jobs, and I use it in all of my lectures. Not Steve Jobs, sorry, Jeff Bezos. And I use it in all of my lectures, where he says, the best decisions I have ever made in life, in business, or in my personal life, is based on gut, intuition, and not data. If you sit behind a desk, and that goes back to your question, how do you stay on top of brand trends and stay on top of your audience? If you read data, the data is not going to get you connected with your audience. At the end of the day, you created a brand based on a desire, based on a need, based on a pain point. You have to follow intuition, because the data most often is not reflecting an emotional sentiment. The data reflects an outcome, but it doesn't reflect the trigger. And I'm saying that in order for you to build a successful brand, you must not let go of your emotional intuition and your gut. That is what is likely going to keep your brand alive.
Very interesting. My next question to you is that how can businesses adapt to the incredibly fast changing landscape when it comes to branding and marketing?
So there are many layers to this question. Is that the landscape of design, the landscape of communications, the landscape of product packaging? There is a lot that goes into it. But at the end of it, I think that simplicity is key. If you really want to build a good brand, then you have to understand, to me, you have to follow the rule of one. What is the rule of one? You have one audience, you have one problem that you're solving, or one benefit that you're solving, and you have one outcome.
Right.
If you stick to that core value that you're bringing to your customers, it will be very easy for them over time, if you'll do it right and consistently, to associate that benefit with you. Okay? So if, we can take a lot of examples. If we're looking at Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Very big example, but the ability to just go out there and hustle, that's what Nike stands for. And that's the excellence that they're striving for. There is another example that I really, really love, and that is by Hyundai, the car manufacturer Hyundai. When Hyundai was on the decline and the brand was not performing very well, they tried to find ways to repenetrate the market. And they realized that their brand equity is very low because they never invested in it. So what they've done is something very remarkable. They really invested in their cars. They brought top quality speakers, the one you can find in Mercedes-Benz. They brought top quality seats, the one you can find in BMW. And they realized something very powerful, that they have to change the consumer mindset. And what they've done, they just asked one simple question. When they relaunched Hyundai, they showed all the great features that they put in the car, and their tagline was, think about it. Think about it. So they know that their audience has one call to action, to think about it. And when you simplify it, when you keep it simple for the audience, when you keep your message focused with one call to action, then it's easy for people to understand, what do you want? And this is where most brands fail. They try to be everything to everyone.
Very interesting. So, Moti, I have time for two more questions. My next question is that, given all your vast experience, if you look in your crystal ball, what are the emerging trends that you see in branding and marketing over the next few years?
The emerging trends?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think that we're going to see a lot of development in the world of climate tech. And I think that we are going to actually see the resurgence of retail and augmented reality.
Yeah.
Augmented reality is going to be a key thing in user experiences. You know, let me share a story with you. I'm working with this augmented reality company right now. And they said, Moti, you know, there is a reason Apple launches a lot of phones. They all look the same. And the only thing that changes is the cameras on the back. Everyone is making fun of them. Oh, now you have 3 cameras. Now you have 2 cameras. There is a reason. The only thing that changes is the cameras in the back. Because that is the focus right now. Everyone is going toward augmented reality. And the brands that are going to work and pioneer augmented reality are going to be the one that will truly capture the next generation of branding interactions.
Amazing. What a great story, that an example that you've given. Thank you. And Moti, my last question, and this is for the many, many, many young people and small business owners who will listen to our conversation. What 3 lessons would you give to small businesses or startups about branding and marketing?
That's a very good question. 1, start with your vision and mission statement. Start with it. It seems irrelevant to a lot of companies. They don't invest a lot of time in it. As I said, they want to go into sales. When you don't have a goal in mind, it's very hard for you to go sideways. When you don't know what you stand for, your brand will stand for nothing.
Correct.
Start with a vision and mission statement. Then stay focused. Stay focused. I'm not saying you shouldn't adapt the brand or make small adjustments, but stay focused on your mission. Because once you start your business and start building the brands, the first thing you're going to encounter is challenges to your conception. But if you believe in that conception, push forward because you are building a brand. And the last thing is that your brand is not for everyone. And you need to understand it. There is an audience for your brand, and there are people who are not going to be into your brand.
Correct.
And that is okay.
Correct.
You need to understand who do you want and go after those people.
Very well said. And on that note, and your 3 amazing lessons, start with a vision and mission, know what you stand for. Second, you said stay focused. And the third one, you said understand your audience. Thank you, Moti, for talking to me about your journey. Thank you for talking to me about so many different aspects of branding. I love what you told me about micro messaging and how important that is, or that's the key. Thank you also for what you spoke about, the power of one. And thank you for the amazing examples and stories you shared with us about multiple brands. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you, Ashton. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.